Hi, I'm Michelle Weldon, journalist and author, and my latest book is called Act Like You're Having a Good Time. It's a book of essays, and I'm looking forward to sharing one of those chapters with you today. And I'm wishing you from my living room in the Chicago area, I'm wishing you a happy holidays. This chapter is called The Electric Frying Pan. And the holidays make us think about our parents. And this is about growing up in the 60s and 70s with my parents who traveled with an electric frying pan everywhere we went. So my mother would cook in the hotel rooms. Here goes. C'est fromage! The uniformed valet who resembled an extra in a 1930s Myrna Loy movie had carelessly piled our blue cooler atop some of our 8 suitcases that he was commandeering in the lobby as my father checked us into the hotel. Really, it was his fault. The valet's, I mean. I know he was probably more used to Louis Vuitton bags, the fancy leather suitcases with the printed initials, metal locks, and handles that he can maneuver 2, maybe 3 at a time. I doubt he had ever handled so many vinyl suitcases for one reservation, plus an American cooler filled with the likes of what my mother had packed for the 8 of us, the hungry 8 of us. I didn't know much French, just the basic Le Chien, the dog, or Mon Dieu, oh my God, in today's parlance, to satisfy a first grade nun and make it seem as though I deserved the Gallic origins of my name. I just knew it was about the plastic container of cottage cheese. Indeed, as I would later learn, that's cheese, is what the valet exclaimed that had just tumbled out of the blue cooler and spilled a white, lumpy, liquid mess on the lobby floor, along with a pound of Oscar Mayer bacon and the bag of ice, half melted and also leaking onto the marble foyer. My father had just checked us into Le Chateau Frontenac in Quebec this 1965 summer, and we were quietly and dutifully preparing to proceed to our set of 3 adjoining rooms like a line of girls in the Madeline books that I loved and was convinced were named after my sister Madeline, even if they spelled her name wrong. Obedient procession in public places was our routine. My older sisters, Mary Pat, Maureen, and Madeline, marching into one room, my brothers Bill and Paul in another, and me, age 7, on a cot in a room with my mom and dad. I loved it when my mother allowed me to unlock the secret connecting doors. It was as if I was in charge of the secrets. Now, following quietly like she taught us, the 6 of us trailed behind our mother in the iridescent lobby. The couches, the curtains, the chandeliers, it all resembled a scene out of Mary Poppins or The Sound of Music. Not the outdoor scenes, but the indoor ones. I don't know where to look first. My father always stayed behind, dawdling at the registration desk. Sometimes I thought it was to be sure everything was okay or just right, but now I think it might have been to stay back and pretend for just a few moments anyway that he was some debonair bachelor all by himself, taking his time to linger at the hotel desk, not the father of 6 whose wife had read all the guidebooks and mailed for a reservation request, receiving a brochure in return. Like everything my mother did, the Canada trip this year was meticulously planned, starting with a flip book she mailed away for months in advance from the American Automobile Association, AAA. The map showed the route in green markers, and I could thumb through the pages, bored and impatient, sitting between my parents in the front seat of the wood-paneled Chrysler station wagon. She had all the details in place, including everything we put into each of our suitcases, all tucked tight without any wiggle room and on the roof steel rack. We had to make a list of what we would pack. She would make sure we had good clothes for church. We went to mass on vacations. And underwear. Once I forgot to pack underwear and we had to make an unplanned stop because Madeline, Mary, and Maureen were older than me and theirs wouldn't fit. The night before every family trip, my father was in the garage or the driveway with a diagram of the positioning of all 8 suitcases so they would fit on the luggage rack and he could tie them down secure. In the lobby, my mother looked the part of the loving matron, always wearing a suit, one of her ribbon suits or a tweed skirt and matching jacket with pearls, good shoes, stockings. She would have hated how most people travel today. yoga pants, flip-flops, sweatshirts, for goodness sakes, hair unkempt, pajamas in public. Mom got her hair done for these big occasions, even if when she came back from the beauty parlor, as she called it, you couldn't touch her hair or bend it because it was super stiff, as if they sprayed a whole can of Aquanet on her head. She despised the leisure suits of the 70s, said everyone looked ridiculous in their bright colored pseudo pajamas. Comfort is not a virtue, she would say. We were all dressed up too. My two brothers in khaki pants and good shoes, button down shirts, vests, and sweaters if it was chilly. My sisters and I, the four of us in dresses or skirts. We didn't match each other most of the time. That was just once in a while, like the royal blue velvet dresses with the lace collars for Christmas, or the black velvet skirts and vests my mother made us, the ones with the gold braid trim that I thought were spectacular. Cher had nothing on me, except that she was a foot or two taller and had that long raven hair and those bright white teeth, and a husband who really couldn't sing. I learned a lot from my mother, not just about going to special places, but how organized your home can be. I learned it all. My mother was one part Auntie Mame with a splash of Jackie Kennedy. She smelled good too, like Chanel No. 5. There it was, the cooler on the lobby floor, cottage cheese and a murky splash, and the valet having a cow, like my sister Maureen said. My mother ignored the shock and indignation of the valet and the looks of the patrons in the lobby, picking up the Oscar Mayer bacon like it was the most normal thing in the world, all in one elegant swoop, grabbing the cooler with the other hand, her bucket purse pushed higher on her forearm. She left the cottage cheese, put the other contacts back into the cooler, shut it tight, placed it back on the pile, and continued to the elevators. She was the model of impunity, immune to embarrassment, acting as if it was all the valet's fault, which it was. He was immobile, his mouth still agape. Someone from behind the desk came to clean it up. We knew not to speak, not to gesture, not to draw attention to ourselves, like she pinched us not to do in church, which I thought was some kind of sin, the way she said it so much. My father was by now acting as if he was in no way related to any of us. This is where he started with the nervous coughing. My mother proceeded to the elevator, and the valet rushed to catch up to us, the six of us, folded into the elevator, now cramped with a luggage rack, and just before the door closed, my father entered. My mother wasn't angry. She still had not acknowledged verbally the cottage cheese that was most assuredly against some hotel rule. Like when you can't bring your own snacks into the movie theater, there wasn't even a sign that told you not to do that. But yeah, we did that too. We all sat through Dr. Zhivago at the Lake Theater in Oak Park with plastic baggies of homemade popcorn, Jiffy Pop. If you didn't have Jiffy Pop, you heated the oil in the pan and shook the kernels around, lying there in a mottled, oily mass of brown and beige. Once the suitcases were sorted out and everyone headed to their shared rooms, we laughed about the cottage cheese and the look on the valet's face, as if a head had rolled out or a finger, some ghastly body part that meant we were criminals or murderers, not just a family with some bacon and cottage cheese or in a cooler in the lobby of a fancy hotel. I mean, it isn't against the law to eat in your room, right? We never did get room service. My mother always said they jacked up the price. And I wondered, what does my Uncle Jack have to do with the price fixing in hotels? The next morning, my mother did what she always did. She woke up early, pulled out and plugged in the electric frying pan that had been packed in my father's suitcase, because of course she didn't want it in hers, cracked a dozen eggs that my father had gone to a local store to purchase and we had kept in the cooler with fresh ice from the ice maker down the hall. She started breakfast. She fried the pound of bacon. The smell and the sizzling woke us up. The familiarity of the bacon aroma, the smoky taste, and the butter sliding beneath the eggs, sheltering us in each other, fortifying us for our day ahead. We had paper plates that were in someone else's suitcases, I think one of the boys, and plastic forks and spoons brought from home. My mom dished out eggs and bacon to each of us. from the side table in the hotel room, and we perched on the edges of both beds, some of us in our chairs, some of us still cross-legged on the floor. We didn't even turn on the TV when we were eating. We were not that kind of family, though plenty of my friends' families were. We were still laughing about the cottage cheese, and I was laughing so hard I almost spit out my eggs. That was before you knew how dirty, hard hotel floors were. They sure didn't look it. On the news shows with the black light cameras that showed you how gross the bedspreads were, with all the splashes illuminated in purple lights. It can make you sick just thinking about it. But no, everything seemed clean and shiny and perfect. The curtains matching the bedspreads and the chairs in all three of our rooms looking exactly the same, except the boys' rooms, whose room was almost always messy as soon as they occupied it, no matter what. When the maid knocked on the door to see if everything was all right, we all laughed, and my mother said, "Yes, come back later." We laughed pretty loud then, too. It was lucky this was years before hotel rooms had smoke alarms, because they surely would have gone off. And then what would we do? Likely we would have been asked to leave. And then where would the 8 of us go? We would live on the street, that's what, because who would have time to send away for a brochure and wait for the response? We cleaned up after ourselves, of course, and when the electric frying pan had cooled, my mother disposed of the grease in the toilet. That was probably not the right thing to do. And packed the pan away under shoes and jackets and hid the cooler in the closet. My mother had a full day planned for us, visiting old Quebec with churches and artists selling watercolor paintings on the street. After breakfast and cleanup and making sure we all looked presentable, as if we were going to be presented to the monarchy or something, who were we being presented to? I always wondered. We set out on our adventure in a new city, in a new country, trying to be French. Madeline dared me to ask a clerk in the lobby, "Quelle heure est-il?" because she said everyone spoke French and she loved teaching me things. "It's 9:30, he responded in English. It mattered what time it was always, even if I didn't have a watch, because my mother always said, "We have so much to do." We were always on a schedule, even had a scheduled nap time, which I think was more for my parents than for us. We had reservations for dinner. We were never late. But I liked to linger in the mornings, sitting on one of the hotel chairs, pressed up against a writing desk, the smell of bacon lingering, all of us there, crowded, contained, our suitcases perched on the luggage racks. Our hotel room smelled like home. That's a chapter in my book that's out now called Act Like You're Having a Good Time. I certainly hope you enjoyed this taste of the holidays from my home to yours, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that. That is part of NBC's Stay Home for the Holidays celebration of storytelling. This is our gift to the community, and we want you to enjoy it. But we're also asking that if by any chance you have the means to donate to the museum this year, we certainly could use it. You'll find the link in the text accompanying this video. And please have a wonderful and safe 2021.